What if I told you that some of Europe's most stable countries might be on the brink of collapse in 2024? And no, I don't mean collapse in the, oh no, I dropped my baguette on the floor kind of way. I mean collapse in the, oh dear God, everything is on fire and also we're bankrupt kind of way. In this series, we're diving into the potential downfall of 13 European nations, revealing why their stability could shatter. This is not just speculation, it's a deep dive into the real risks they face. The kind of risks that keep economists up at night sweating and muttering about sovereign debt. Luxembourg. Land of banks, chocolate, and more money than God himself could count. But don't let the glitz and glamour fool you, because beneath the surface of this financial powerhouse lies a vulnerability as delicate as a sugar glass swan. You see, Luxembourg, for all its wealth, is tiny. We're talking the size of Rhode Island, but with better tax havens. And much like Rhode Island, it's incredibly susceptible to global economic headwinds. Imagine a chihuahua in a hurricane. That's Luxembourg facing a global recession. One minute you're enjoying a tax break, the next you're clinging to a miniature schnauzer for dear life. It's not a good look. Next up, we sail to the sun-kissed shores of Malta, a nation so picturesque it could be featured on a postcard. Probably right next to a picture of a cat wearing a tiny hat. But behind those charming facades, Malta is facing some serious waves. And I'm not talking about the kind you surf on. This island nation is heavily reliant on two things: tourism and financial services. Now, individually, those are perfectly respectable industries, like a pair of well-tailored swim trunks. But put them together and you've got a recipe for potential disaster. Add in a dash of political scandal, a sprinkle of declining tourism, and suddenly you've got yourself a recipe for a very unappetizing economic cocktail. It's a pina colada, with a side of impending financial ruin. Our next stop takes us to the landlocked Principality of Liechtenstein, a country so small you could probably cross it on a unicycle, if you were allowed to ride a unicycle in Liechtenstein, which, let's be honest, is probably frowned upon. Now, Liechtenstein's banking sector is its bread and butter, its lifeblood, well, you get the idea. It's basically the only thing keeping this tiny nation afloat. But what happens when the global economy catches a cold? That's right, Liechtenstein gets pneumonia. A global financial crisis could spell disaster for this tiny country, making its economic stability as fragile as a sandcastle in a tsunami. And let's be honest, nobody wants to be caught building sandcastles when the economic tsunami hits. Chapter 4, Cyprus, a house divided. Moving on, we arrive at the island nation of Cyprus, a land soaked in sunshine and, well, mostly sunshine. But beneath that sunny disposition lies a nation deeply divided. We're talking Greek Cypriots versus Turkish Cypriots, two sides of the same coin constantly flipping back and forth. It's enough to make you want to scream into a plate of halloumi. Now, add to that a heaping helping of economic struggles and you've got yourself a recipe for potential disaster. Imagine a game of Jenga, but instead of wooden blocks, it's ethnic tensions and economic woes. One wrong move and the whole thing comes crashing down. Chapter 5, Iceland, walking on thin ice. Our journey now takes us to the land of fire and ice, Iceland, home to stunning glaciers, erupting volcanoes, and Bjork. But while Iceland may seem like a land of mythical creatures and breathtaking landscapes, its economy is about as sturdy as a house of cards in a wind tunnel. You see, Iceland is heavily reliant on tourism and fishing, two industries about as predictable as the weather, which in Iceland is to say, not at all. Imagine a tightrope walker balancing precariously over a chasm of economic uncertainty. One strong gust of wind, one bad fishing season, and it's all over. And let's not forget about those pesky volcanoes. They tend to throw a wrench into the tourism industry. What with all the ash clouds and molten lava, it's enough to make you want to invest in a really good pair of thermal underwear. Chapter 6, Slovenia, a delicate machine on the Fritz. Next, we find ourselves in Slovenia, a nation known for its stunning alpine scenery, delicious wines, and, well, let's be honest, not much else. But don't let that fool you, because Slovenia's economy is like a finely tuned engine, humming along nicely as long as nothing goes wrong. The problem is, when you're this reliant on regional stability and exports, even the slightest hiccup can send you careening off the road and into a ditch of economic despair. Imagine a game of dominoes, where each domino represents a different factor in Slovenia's economic stability. One domino falls, and it's a chain reaction all the way down. It's enough to make you want to invest in a really good pair of earplugs to block out the sound of crashing dominoes. Chapter 7, Slovakia cracks in the foundation. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're headed to Slovakia, a nation known for its beautiful castles, hearty cuisine, and a political climate that's about as stable as a unicycle on a tightrope. Slovakia's political landscape is fragmented, to put it mildly. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where someone lost half the pieces and then decided to fill in the gaps with whatever they could find lying around. Add to that an economy heavily dependent on foreign investment, and you've got yourself a recipe for potential disaster. Imagine a building with cracks spreading through its foundation. One good earthquake, one major economic downturn, and the whole thing could crumble. Chapter 8. Estonia Digital Fortress or House of Cards. Our digital journey now takes us to Estonia, a nation that's practically synonymous with all things tech. They've got e-residency, e-voting, e-everything. It's enough to make you wonder if they even have real people living there or if it's just a nation of highly efficient robots. But even in this digital utopia, there are cracks in the code. You see, Estonia is right on the doorstep of a certain large, unpredictable neighbor to the east. And that neighbor has a bit of a history of, let's just say, borrowing territory that doesn't belong to them. So while Estonia may be a digital fortress, it's also a fortress built right next door to a very grumpy bear. And nobody wants to be around when that bear gets hungry. Chapter 9. Latvia Stretching the Limits. Hold on to your potatoes because we're headed to Latvia, a nation known for its beautiful forests, rich culture, and an economy that's about as stable as a Jenga tower built by a hyperactive squirrel. Latvia is facing a perfect storm of challenges, from geopolitical tensions to internal issues that just won't quit. Imagine a balloon being inflated more and more, the rubber stretching thinner and thinner. How much pressure can it take before it bursts? That's the question keeping Latvian economists up at night. It's enough to make you want to invest in a really good stress ball. And maybe a helmet. Next up, we travel to Lithuania, a nation known for its beautiful amber jewelry, its love of basketball, and an economy that's about as stable as a house of cards built on a roller coaster. Lithuania is heavily dependent on external factors, which is a bit like building your house on the side of an active volcano. It might look pretty for a while, but it's only a matter of time before things get messy. Economic dependencies and regional conflicts could bring Lithuania's fragile economy crashing down faster than you can say, "Where's the nearest fire extinguisher?" It's enough to make you want to invest in a really good hard hat, and maybe a fireproof suit. Our journey takes us now to Ukraine, a nation currently staring down the barrel of a very real and very terrifying crisis. We're not talking about a dip in the stock market, or a slight increase in the price of bread. We're talking about a full-blown invasion by a neighboring superpower. It's the kind of situation that makes you want to build a bunker out of borscht and pierogies. But even in the face of such adversity, the Ukrainian people remain defiant. They're fighting for their homeland, their freedom, their right to exist. It's a stark reminder that while economic indicators and political instability are important, sometimes the most significant threat to a nation's survival comes from forces beyond its control. Hold on to your paprika because we're headed to Hungary, a nation known for its thermal baths, its spicy cuisine, and a political climate that's hotter than a bowl of goulash. Hungary's government has been clashing with the EU like a pair of cymbal-banging monkeys in a china shop. Add to that a heaping helping of economic woes, and you've got yourself a recipe for potential disaster. Imagine a nation teetering on the edge of a cliff, held back only by a fraying rope of political stability and economic prosperity. One wrong move, one gust of wind, and it's all over. And finally, we arrive at our number one spot, the bell pays itself, Italy, land of pizza, pasta, and a whole lot of economic anxiety. Italy, our perennial champion of how to flirt with disaster and still look effortlessly stylish, is back at it again. This time, it's not just the mafia or Silvio Berlusconi they have to worry about. It's the economy, stupid. Italy's debt is higher than Mount Etna, its political system is more fragmented than a dropped plate of spaghetti, and its youth unemployment rate is enough to make you want to drown your sorrows in a vat of Chianti. It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but instead of a train, it's the entire Italian economy. And instead of a wreck, it's a giant pile of delicious but ultimately unsustainable pasta. So there you have it, folks. 13 European nations teetering on the brink. Will they collapse in 2024? Who knows? That's the beauty of geopolitics and economics. It's a wild ride with no seatbelts. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be an interesting year. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to build a bunker out of canned goods and learn how to say help. I'm surrounded by economic instability in 13 different languages.